As dusk falls over the northern lakes, the world holds its breath. The air grows still, the forest hushes, and the water, like black glass, waits. Then faintly, just beyond the reach of reason, a sound begins to rise. A violin, slow, mournful, beautiful. It weaves through the mist like a ghost's breath, a song not heard with the ears alone, but felt deep within the chest, as if the melody were written for your soul. You step closer, compelled, hypnotized. The melody promises answers, promises beauty, promises something you've long forgotten. But this is no ordinary music. This is the song of the Nøkk, a shapeshifter, a seducer, a spirit of water and shadow who lures the curious to their doom. Known across Scandinavia and Central Europe by many names, Nøkk, Näcken, Nixie, this creature plays a tune older than memory, deeper than myth. This is its story.
Across the mist-laced waterways of northern Europe, a legend stir, known by many names yet bound by a single haunting truth: the Nøkk, the Näcken, the Nix, the Nixie, the Nøkken. These are no simple spirits. They are supernatural beings of ancient origin, born of water, silence, and sorrow. In Norse, Germanic, and Scandinavian folklore, the Nøkk is both beautiful and deadly, a creature of dualities, soothing and savage, alluring and lethal. Often found near still lakes, rushing rivers, and even deep forgotten wells, the Nøkk waits patiently. It plays a melody on a violin, or in older tales a harp, luring the curious and the innocent with a song too perfect to resist. Those who follow, enchanted, step willingly toward their fate, and vanish beneath the surface, leaving no ripples, no cries, no trace. Though the creature's appearance shifts across borders, the essence remains chillingly consistent. In Sweden it is called the Näcken, a sorrowful man draped in water lilies, weeping and playing mournful songs on the riverbank. In Norway it is the Nøkken, a shapeshifter cloaked in mystery. In Germany, the Nix or Nixie may appear as a water maiden or a pale horse. In the Faroe Islands and Iceland, it's the Nøkken, just as dangerous, just as hypnotic. The name may change, the accent may shift, but the warning endures. Never trust the tune that floats on water. For the Nøkk is not merely a myth, it is a mirror of the deep itself, mysterious, unknowable, beautiful, and merciless. In the ancient worldview of the Norse and Germanic peoples, water was never just water. It was a living, breathing entity, at once sacred, mysterious, and deeply feared. It flowed from the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. It pooled around the edges of Midgard, the human realm. Water was a force of both creation and destruction. Long before Christianity reshaped northern Europe, these waters were believed to be inhabited by spirits, some benevolent, others malevolent. Among the most feared was the Nøkk, a water being that did not roar like a thunder god or crush mountains like giants, but instead whispered and waited. Unlike grand mythic figures like Jormungandr, the world serpent, who lay coiled around the earth and threatened the cosmos at Ragnarok, the Nøkk operated on a smaller, far more intimate scale. There were no prophecies written about him, no gods raised swords against him. But his presence was felt by every fishing village, every farmer near a stream, every child warned to stay away from the reeds. The earliest conceptions of the Nøkk appear in Proto-Norse and Old High German traditions, where he was described as a shapeless, malevolent entity lurking in the depths. Later in the Eddas and sagas he evolved, sometimes taking form as a seductive man or a sinister horse, always tied to water, always with an unspoken warning. In Old English, similar beings were known as Nykor, and were mentioned in Beowulf, aquatic monsters that dwelled in the marshes and devoured the unwary. The word Nykor would evolve into Nix, Nix, and eventually Nøkk, depending on the region and the language. To the Norse, water was a boundary, a liminal space. Crossing it could mean travel between worlds, Midgard, Asgard, Helheim. It was only natural that spirits would guard these thresholds. The Nøkk may have begun as a guardian, but over time he became a predator. For the people of medieval Scandinavia and Germany, the Nøkk explained the inexplicable: a missing fisherman, a child swept away by a stream, the eerie sensation of being watched near still waters. And with time these fears solidified into story, and story became legend. The Nøkk is a creature of deception, a shapeshifter with no true form, only masks that suit the moment. To gaze upon the Nøkk is not to know it, but to be drawn into its performance, a dance of illusions spun across the surface of the water. In one tale, the Nøkk appears as a man, tall, slender, and impossibly beautiful. His skin glistens like river mist, and his long, wet hair drapes down his back in strands of algae and moonlight. He sits silently on the edge of a lake or perched atop a mossy rock, cradling a violin carved from driftwood and bone. The music he plays is haunting, so haunting, in fact, that listeners forget their own names. They step forward entranced and vanish beneath the glassy surface. But the Nøkk does not only wear the face of man. In some parts of Scandinavia, he takes the form of a horse, a magnificent, ethereal stallion, sleek and shining as if sculpted from water itself. He appears alone by the riverside, unmoving, seemingly gentle. To a child or a wanderer, he is irresistible, but once mounted, the rider finds they cannot dismount. The horse bolts toward the river with unnatural speed, hooves never touching earth. Then, with a final splash, both disappear, forever. In other stories, he is less defined, a ripple in still water, a figure glimpsed between trees, a shadow that watches but never moves. He may even steal the faces of loved ones, a brother, a parent, a friend, anyone the victim would trust. The illusion is flawless until it's too late. This is the Nøkk's true power, not brute force, but seduction. His beauty is not a gift, it is a trap, a warning disguised as wonder, and the more radiant the form, the more dangerous the moment. For the Nøkk feeds not only on flesh, but on surrender, on the willing step into the unknown, on the fatal decision to follow the song. So when you see something or someone too beautiful to be real by the water's edge, don't approach, don't speak, and whatever you do, don't listen to the music. The Nøkk's most potent weapon is not a snare or a blade, but a song. More than a creature of water, the Nøkk is a master of music, a weaver of melodies so entrancing, so painfully beautiful, that they bypass the mind and strike directly at the soul. He is most often seen cradling a violin, an old instrument worn smooth by river mist and moonlight. In older tales it was a harp, its strings said to be made from the hair of those who drowned listening. Whatever the instrument, the effect is the same. The moment the Nøkk begins to play, the world around you fades, the wind hushes, time stills, and your heart begins to ache, with a longing you cannot name. Some who heard the tune swore it brought visions of lost lovers, forgotten childhoods, or futures that could never be. Others wept openly, unable to move, while the music wrapped around them like fog, guiding them ever closer to the water's edge. In Sweden, they call it Näcken's polka, a melody so mournful it is said to be unforgettable and fatal. According to old stories, there were those who sought the Nøkk hoping to learn the tune. Desperate musicians who offered blood, sanity, even their souls, just to possess a fraction of the Nøkk's otherworldly talent. Sometimes the Nøkk agreed. He would teach them songs no human hand had ever played, filling their fingers with unnatural brilliance. But the price was steep. Some went mad, playing day and night until their fingers bled. Others found their music cursed. Anyone who listened too long would fall into a trance and never wake. For the Nøkk does not play for joy. He plays to beckon, to claim, to consume. His music is not a gift, it is a lure, a ripple in the air, as dangerous as any whirlpool in the deep. And so if you ever hear an unplaceable melody drifting through the trees or curling across still water, pause, listen with caution, because if the tune is too beautiful to bear, it may not be of this world. The Nøkk is not the tale of a single village. It is a chorus echoing across northern Europe, whispered beside still ponds, murmured through reeds, and carved into the collective memory of generations. Each region offers its own variation, its own cautionary tale, and none of them end well. In the misty valleys of Norway, parents long warned their children, never approach a lake at dusk. For as the shadows lengthen and the wind falls silent, the Näkken stirs beneath the surface. He is said to rise just as the water turns gold, disguised as a lonely man or a calm horse, waiting with terrible patience. The stories tell of children who vanished without a cry, only ripples remained and a soft, distant melody. In Sweden, the Näcken takes on a more tragic guise. He is seen not as a monster, but as a cursed spirit, one who weeps by the riverbank at twilight, his sobs woven into the sorrowful strains of his violin. They say he was once a man who defied the gods, or a musician who loved the river more than life. Now forever bound to its currents, he plays not to kill, but to be heard. Yet those who listen too long fall into his grief, and follow it into the depths. In Germany, the nokk becomes die Nix the Nixie, a female water spirit beautiful beyond compare. She lures wanderers and lovers with sweet songs and promises of ecstasy, only to drag them beneath the waves. Some stories claim she takes them to an underwater palace of glass and bone. Others say they simply disappear. In Saxony, there's a tale of a man who fell in love with a Nixie and lived with her beneath a river for 7 years. When he returned, he was old, hollow-eyed, and mute, forever changed. And yet, not all the tales speak only of death. Some whisper that the nokk could be bargained with, a black animal, preferably a cat, thrown into the river, a single drop of your own blood, or a silver coin tossed into the current beneath the moonlight. These offerings might buy you protection, or perhaps a gift, a tune, a dream, a secret melody whispered into your sleep. But even these small mercies come at a cost. The nokk does not forget kindness, but neither does it forget the blood of the unwary. So the stories endure, passed from mouth to ear around fires and on winter nights, not merely to scare, but to remind that the world is still wild, that beauty can be a blade, and that beneath the stillest surface something ancient might still be listening. Beneath the surface of every nokk tale lies something more than fear. It is a symbol, ancient and enduring, a warning dressed in beauty, a reflection of the untamed forces that surround us and live within us. In Norse and Germanic cultures, water was never just water. It gave life, but it could also take it without mercy. A lake could mirror the sky one moment, and in the next, swallow a man whole. This duality of beauty masking danger was embodied in the nokk, a spirit of seduction and death who used music and charm instead of tooth and claw. The nokk became the answer to terrible questions. Why did the strong swimmer vanish in calm waters? Why did the child wander too close to the river's edge? Why did the gifted musician go mad after mastering one strange, sorrowful tune? When nature could not be explained, mythology filled the silence, and in that silence the nokk played. His violin was more than an instrument, it was a metaphor for temptation, for obsession, for the dangerous allure of things we do not fully understand. Music in ancient times was believed to hold power, to change moods, summon spirits, even open the gates between worlds. The nokk's song reminded people that even beauty could be fatal. He is a symbol of seduction with consequences, of the unknown that calls to us, even when we know we should turn away, of every beautiful danger we've ever ignored, until it was too late. In many ways, the nokk doesn't just represent a spirit lurking in the water. He represents us, our choices, our fascinations, and the thin, glittering line between wonder and ruin. Though born from the mists of ancient legend, the nokk has never truly vanished. It lingers, transformed, reimagined, woven into the tapestry of modern culture in ways both obvious and subtle. In the world of literature and storytelling, the nokk has emerged as a symbol of the unknown, of seduction cloaked in danger, and of the primal lure of nature's depths. In dark fantasy novels and graphic novels, it often returns as a haunting presence, an ethereal musician, a sorrowful trickster, or a cursed guardian of forgotten lakes. Its song may be silent, but the tension it evokes remains unmistakable. In music, composers like Edvard Grieg once channeled the myth into haunting classical melodies, while modern dark ambient and neo-folk artists conjure its presence with layered sounds that drip, echo, and whisper like reeds in the wind. In the digital age, the Nøkk has been resurrected in video games like The Witcher, where it assumes forms that challenge, entice, or devour. In God of War, it breathes again in the mythic mist, haunting players as a shape-shifting entity that speaks to forgotten fears. And in Frozen 2, Disney introduces a new generation to the legend, recasting the Nøkk as a majestic elemental water spirit, powerful and wild, yet deeply bound to nature's will. Even when softened for younger audiences, the essence of the Nøkk endures, beauty laced with peril, wonder woven with warning, a timeless creature that straddles two worlds, the seen and unseen, the charming and the deadly. Modern retellings may romanticize him, they may reshape him, but they do not erase him. The Nøkk remains a mirror, reflecting our curiosity, our fear of the unknown, and our eternal attraction to the edge of the water, where something ancient still waits. As terrifying as the legend of the Nøkk was, people throughout history were not helpless in the face of his haunting song. Folklore is not merely story, it is survival. And so communities developed methods of protection, rituals and charms meant to ward off the whispering lure of the water spirit. The first rule was simple: know its name. In many old tales, speaking the Nøkk's name aloud, calling it out boldly, could break the spell of its music and dissolve its illusion. Naming gave power, it pierced the veil. Others trusted in ancient tools of protection: iron, believed to repel evil spirits, red clothing associated with life and strength, or runes, carved or painted on skin, stones, or wooden charms, carrying the sacred magic of the old gods. These were not just superstitions. They were the spiritual armor of a people who lived close to wild, unpredictable nature. Some travelers, before crossing rivers or approaching still water, would toss a silver coin into the depths, a token to appease the Nøkk, or perhaps to distract it. Others sang Christian hymns or old pagan chants invoking divine or ancestral protection. But not all safeguards were material. The most powerful warnings were passed from mouth to ear, generation after generation. Even today, in some secluded Scandinavian villages, children are gently but firmly reminded: never follow music into the forest, never trust a horse that waits by a lake with no tracks in the mud, and never ever look too long into the water when it sings back at you. Because once the Nøkk sees you, it does not forget. The Nøkk is more than just a myth whispered by firelight or scribbled in the margins of ancient texts. It is a mirror, dark, rippling, and deep, reflecting something profoundly human. It echoes our longing for beauty, for mystery, for the thrill of stepping too close to the edge. It is the whisper in our ear when we walk alone near still water, the inexplicable chill when we hear music with no source, the part of us that is drawn to danger, not in spite of it, but because of it. To some, the Nøkk is a spirit of sorrow, a cursed soul crying out for release. To others, it is a predator, cloaked in charm, pulling the unwary into the shadows. But perhaps most chilling of all is the idea that the Nøkk never needed to change. We did. Our fears evolved, our landscapes shifted, but the tune, the lure remained. And so even now, as we build cities, pave rivers, and illuminate the dark, the Nøkk plays on. Patient, eternal, waiting. Maybe you'll hear it tonight, in the hum of wind over a lake, in the echo of your own thoughts, or in that moment when something beautiful seems just a little too perfect. And if you do, pause, ask yourself, is it music or a warning? And if you step closer, will you be the next to listen?
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.